Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our second crowdfunding panel, going beyond the initial crowdfunding campaign to global expansion. And I think I just wanted to really mention our live funding campaign that's happening right now globally, right in the For Creators by Creators Conference Expo Center. Many of you may have seen the announcement that it's going to be We the People's first live funding campaign in the US, in the Silicon Valley store too, and the St. Louis store. They've run successful live funding campaigns in Singapore, and now we're global. So we're really excited to be introducing the panelists today for how to go global and thinking about expansion. For example, Daniel going from Asia to Silicon Valley, Hansen going from the US to Asia. He's in Malaysia right now. Nissan and Ryan starting as retail crowdfunding creators and going into all these stores worldwide. And so we're really excited to introduce our panelists. For those of you who may not have been at our earlier kickoff sessions, I'll go ahead and reintroduce Daniel Chin, as well as our other panelists, and then jump into our questions. So Daniel Chin is the founder and CEO of Hyper, which specializes in cutting edge Apple and mobile accessories and has had record-breaking Kickstarter campaigns with a USB-C hub and a USB charger, combining over 5 million, close to 6 million in Kickstarter campaigns, and more to come, or more that he's had. And his Hyper products are in just about all the major retail stores worldwide, and you can see it at hypershop.com. Hansen, I actually met at our first FCBC Boston event at Babson College, and actually now work in Boston and Cambridge with the Cambridge Innovation Center. So it's a small world. Like I said, he's in Malaysia now as the CEO and founder of ThinkBoard, which is a product that easily turns any surface into a whiteboard. His entrepreneurial career has launched while he was still in college, with recognitions from EO as the top 15 student entrepreneurs in 2016, and by Beta Boston as Boston's top 25 entrepreneurs under 25. He's skilled in innovation management, customer service, and consulting, and I'm excited to see how his product grows globally. Nissan, as I've mentioned before, is one of the co-founders of We the People. His friends and his co-founders are fellow creators. At We the People, he's the managing director of purchasing and brand management, and he's also responsible for new product acquisition and creator communication. He's also the founder of Talking Toes, which is the world's first socks with inspirational sayings printed on the toes. Not many people know this, but he actually started Talking Toes to fund his surfboarding hobby. And finally, there's Evan Barsamis, who is with Gadget Flow, and he actually mentioned at our last crowdfunding creators panel. He's a New York City-based entrepreneur and founder and CEO of Gadget Flow Incorporated, also an investor and marketing advisor, a curator, and a contributor at Forbes, Huffington Post, and American Express Essentials. Sprint Crowdfunding Fund and Crowdreach advisor and speaker. His work has been featured in Mashable, The Next Web, Entrepreneur, Fortune, Forbes, and Web Summit. Evan founded Gadget Flow in 2012 with Cassie Usta and Mike. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this name. You can say Mike's last name when you unmute yourself, Evan. And his platform now reaches over 28 million people across their website and iOS and Android apps. And so why don't we start with you, Evan, in terms of expanding globally and talking about what your advice would be for giving businesses that are growing globally.
Sure. So basically it's not easy, right? But I mean, you should be focusing on hiring the right people and fast.
Pronouncing names, right?
Right. Exactly. I think that it makes all the difference, like hiring the right people, making sure that you prioritize on that. It can save you a lot of time. It can save you a lot of money. Focusing on partnerships as well and constantly doing biz devs, can definitely skyrocket your growth as well, and should be among your top priorities, as a founder or as a CEO of a startup. Understanding the cultural barriers and cultural differences between regions and market is also essential. For example, in crowdfunding, since that's the main topic, I see a lot of foreign startups, for example, launching a campaign on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, without taking into consideration that the majority of the backers, for example, is, in most cases will come from the US. So they don't optimize their content for US backers. So, you know, paying attention to these teeny tiny things could make all the difference.
Yeah, thank you. And in terms of keeping your product relevant to a global audience, Evan, how do you kind of deal with pricing, shipping, et cetera, going around the globe?
Yeah, so I mean, research a lot and then research again, right? I mean, the biggest fails in crowdfunding, other than just scammy creators and, you know, uh, having like scammy campaigns the past few years that have been like a huge issue, as all of you know, is the second biggest thing is shipping times and not having enough funds to fulfill the orders, right? So I think that, you know, we've partnered with a lot of brands, especially in Asia, the past few months, primarily fulfillment centers, right, that actually offer you like pretty decent and accurate quote when it comes to crowdfunding before you even launch your campaign. So I would recommend to all creators that are about to launch a campaign to get as many, you know, like quotes from these companies as possible, and do the math. Do it 5 times, do it 10 times, and then have someone else do it for you as well. So it all makes sense at the end. And then be accurate at your estimations and on your projections as well when it comes to launching your campaign. Creating a global product obviously is not easy, right? But it's possible. You can obviously copy the big brands, what they're doing, their approach and everything in between, and try to replicate that as well. But when it comes down to advertising, as well as the audiences that you're targeting, you need to definitely adapt and to be able to target those different countries, those different target audience with different ads, and make sure that it works and keep optimizing.
Yeah, that's great to get advice on kind of reaching that global audience. And I know with all the mentions of the publications, that's at our last panel, people were saying getting on the Wall Street Journal or getting mentioned by a popular publication can also help with that.
Yeah.
Any kind of thoughts on helping people get noticed from a global perspective, and making sure that the, you know, you're facing the what kind of challenges that you might face as you're trying to get noticed?
Yeah, so I mean, other than just cultural barriers and making sure, for example, that, you know, your product is ready for those different markets, I think that it's all about strategy, right? I mean, PR can definitely help you. Hiring like experts in different like continents can definitely help you as well. But at the end of the day, you know, if we're talking about just a crowdfunding campaign, you know, having like a proper pre-launch campaign set in place and making sure that you have all these 5, 10, 50, 20,000 subscribers, you know, the majority of those people are going to be from the US, from Europe, from Singapore, right? So you need to be optimizing your advertising around their culture. So that means that, you know, when it comes down to introducing your product, right, you need to do it right. If you're like, for example, from the UK or Germany or Australia, obviously, you know, you have a lot of things common with people from the US, right? But when it comes to pitching your product and presenting it, there might be some teeny tiny things, as an example, that could make or break the way that you present it, right? And could even skyrocket, or I guess, you know, like to the opposite exactly effect for your conversion rate. So focusing on, you know, pitching it the right way, I think it's very crucial. And of course, like, again, hiring the right people, because you can definitely like read a couple blog posts, you can definitely like, you know, go through a few podcasts and say, oh yeah, I'm going to do that for my next campaign and everything. But at the end of the day, you know, imagine how much money you can save, how much time you can save just hiring the right people, doing that for you.
Yeah, that's great. I want to jump over to Daniel and ask you this question about, you know, how big is too big as you're growing? You know, what's some advice that you can give about growing your brand at a speed that's manageable, and kind of what challenges you've faced during your growth?
Well, you know that you're going too big if you're receiving more orders than you can produce, or if you're not responding to your customers fast enough. I guess that's a good problem to have. It means that you have more business than you can handle, and how to manage. And you were saying how to grow a business at a speed that is manageable.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you want, as a business owner, you want to grow your business as fast as you can. You don't want to slow down. But then again, it's basically a fine line of managing resources. You don't want to hire more people than the actual work that's available, and you don't want to have more inventory than the market would need. So basically, you have to research, you have to know your business well. You have to leave a small buffer for growth, and in a short period of time, if business is great, you can hire part-time help, get agencies, contractors to help with the increase in business. The whole idea is to plan ahead, and then project where your business is heading, and think and prepare for different scenarios. If you know where, you know basically how much you're going to sell, but also plan for different scenarios. If there is overwhelming demand, or if there's underwhelming demand, how you should go for it. It's all about planning and knowing your business very well.
Yeah, that's a great tip in terms of making sure you know what kind of contingencies you would have if things don't go as you plan. So you know what the different scenarios might be, and what your plans would be if something happened as you're growing that you weren't expecting. So I want to jump to Hanson now and ask you your question in terms of getting a product off the ground, thinking about what the downfalls might be as there's competition, or other types of challenges. So I'd love to hear, kind of as you've grown, what challenges you've faced, and how you've gotten your product off the ground.
Definitely. So I get this question a lot, mostly from student entrepreneurs trying to figure out, got an idea, how do I do it? And initially, I mean, funding is the number one problem that most people face. But for me, it actually started out differently. Myself was the sole founder in college, and instead of just having an idea, raising a bunch of money, trying to push it to market, it was me solving a problem just for myself, with the limited resources I had, and then realizing that other people had the same problem, and then selling the limited resource edition, until I got enough funding to then buy more of that, sell more of that, and then kind of keep churning that back into the company, eventually launching a Kickstarter, which then helped do an initial production run of like the real product. But for the first 3, 4, 5 months, we were selling a product that really wasn't that great. But what was amazing about that is it allowed us to understand who was our customer, who was buying, if people actually were interested, if people actually cared about this thing, and if we should pursue it, versus just being like, oh, I've got this brilliant idea, and like, I'm gonna go raise $500,000 or $100,000 or whatever, get it produced, get all this inventory, and then hope that I can sell it. And I think the fact that I just stuck a giant sticker on my wall as a whiteboard to start, and the demand was inbound always, really significantly helped with the initial launch of getting it off the ground, because it wasn't really a push. It was more of a pull from the customers from the beginning. People say like, how'd you know you wanted to start a think board? And I always say like, well, I didn't really have a choice. The customers just kept wanting more, buying more, demanding more. And then whenever we wanted new products, it was the customers asking for bigger products, custom products, templates on the products, different colors, stuff like that. So early on, it's a lot about listening to your customers. And if you don't have any customers because you're too focused on trying to build a product and raise money and just hope that you can build something to push to market, you lose all of that feedback in the process. So contrary to what Daniel just said, I believe going slow is a little bit better from my perspective, of course, because it's a smaller business. We're not trying to be incredibly massive in the first few years. I'd like to have it consistently grow over the next 10 or 15. So I'm happy moving a little bit slower, understanding the customer a little bit better, really focusing on getting a good quality product that is unlike anything in the market. So you talked about competitors. Within 2 years, there was 50 or 100 knockoffs from China that were selling on Amazon that would sell at $10 or $15 a piece, and we were selling at 30 or 40. What we did is, instead of dropping our price and going cheaper, we increased our prices and went higher. And instead of staying in like a mid-tier market, we decided to go all in on the premium market. And now we're currently the most expensive of our product on Amazon, but the best selling, because people normally, when they look at a whiteboard, they envision the gross, not erasing product. So our product is now the same price as a normal traditional board, but the quality of a superior one. So competition hasn't been too much of an issue. It's been more of a reminder to keep innovating and making the product better and better.
Yeah, it sounds like being able to differentiate yourself in the market and choosing, whether you have slower growth or faster growth, whether you're a premium market or more of a commodity, those are all choices that a company has to make as they're growing their brand globally. And I think that also I can plug in this question from an audience member for Daniel, about how there was a brand called Hypercube that was also on out there, and whether that affected you, and kind of thinking about the brand name. Would you be able to talk a little bit about that, Daniel?
It's great that you asked me the question. I was actually in the process of typing my response to the question. Yes, it was really an unfortunate coincidence to have another product sharing the same name as ours. I mean, we have the trademark for Hyper. Hyper is our brand, and we have been, all our products, we have been naming them as Hyper something, be Hyper Dry, Hyper Juice, in this case, Hyper Cube. So what happened was they actually sent us a cease and desist letter, but their Hyper Cube trademark did not cover that particular product that we were launching on Kickstarter. So they have no legal grounds to the Hypercube trademark. And we, on our hand, we actually have trademark for the Hyper brand. So yeah, I mean, these kind of things happen in business. Sometimes coincidence happen, and yeah, you just have to protect yourself legally.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, like thinking about an example would be, thinking about as you go to market, whether your name should be trademarked. We the People itself is known in the U.S. for it's not trademarked in the Constitution, but there's different, people reference different brands in different ways. And so I definitely think that protecting yourself, but also knowing how to, approach a new market with your brand, and whether, for example, CIC, there's a CIC in France. That's a bank. So there's different things that we have to think about as we're going into global markets. And it looks like, Evan, you typed an answer to the question here on shedding some light on whether a creator should begin their pre-marketing, like when that should happen, and what the best strategies there are to use. Do you want to go ahead and kind of talk through what you said, and if there's anything else you wanted to add?
Sure. I mean, we can talk about this all day long, right? Like when it comes to pre-launch, I'm gonna take it from the start. Basically 2/3 of crowdfunding campaigns fails basically for physical products, right? And the number one reason, as most of you know, is not doing a proper pre-launch, not having a proper pre-launch campaign. So I think that it can make all the difference when it comes to preparation. I know that a lot of people are eager to get started with their campaign and just go live, right? And that's not the case. Just wait it out, wait for two to 4 months, gather those subscribers, research on how you can promote your product. There's so many checklists, so many different checklists out there. I posted one from Gadgetflow as well that I wrote with my team. There's just so many forums, so many blogs, so many podcasts that you can listen to. Just be ready and do it right, because when you go live, chances are by over 60% that if you don't do these things right, you're gonna fail. So why fail once and just do it again, right? And if you have to fail, at least fail fast, so you can relaunch, do it properly this time. You've learned your lesson. just allocate the time, use the resources that you have to just do everything right from the beginning, if you can. If you cannot, fail fast so you can relaunch as fast as possible. Pre-launch, I think, is by far one of the most important things of launching a campaign. We've helped more than 4,000 customers in the crowdfunding space since 2012. And yeah, I think that basically the more we educate our customers, because we have people reaching out to us like a month prior, right? Or a year on the other hand. And the first thing that we mention is, before you sign up with us, before you do anything else, focus on pre-launch. And they appreciate it, obviously, because they realize after, they talk to other creators and talk to other people that, this is by far one of the most important things. So I don't think I can stress this enough, right?
Yeah, and I think we talked a bit about pre-marketing in the initial panel as well. And I think really thinking about, once you've successfully run a campaign, going global and working with that that next step. And I think Nissan would be a great person to talk about the brands you've worked with through We the People, and thinking about global expansion specifically for We the People first. I think it would be great to hear your perspective on what does global expansion look like, and what kind of advice you would be giving to creators on taking your local crowdfunding campaign and making it go global.
Once you're fully funded, I believe that as creators, you have lots of distributors and lots of online and offline sales channels will approach you. So it's a very long process. I believe as a buyer, they want to ensure that, hey, you know what, the product really works. They usually have a sample, they want a sample, they test it. So they might not reply you as fast. So I believe that as a creator, have a product that works, have a product that is viable. It's not just a typical MVP. Have something that's commercially ready. From Kickstarter, it's usually a first batch. So unless you're really confident of that, then go ahead with dealing with these sales channels. But if not, hold on, develop the product, make it better, and keep in touch with these people. Don't lose the contact, be friendly with them, and I think you'll progress from there.
And from your perspective as the co-founder of We the People, and where We the People itself is going globally, what do you think are the steps you're taking that will take you to that next level?
Oh, I believe as a crowdfunding or a brand that you raise your funds on Kickstarter, you want a company that best represents you in the right way and in the right manner. So I would love to be biased. It's definitely We the People. And you want to ensure that, hey, you know what? You want to have the proper sales service. You want to have proper representation. You want to have proper branding. And I think that's a key advantage that we might have as We the People. We make brands shine. It's not just about the product. It's about the experience. It's about creators. And you're just buying the entire experience as a consumer. So as a creator, you're in safe hands.
Janice, I think you're muted.
Janice, I think you're muted.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. I was just saying that it sounds like similar to the creators on the platform that need to differentiate their products, We the People has also differentiated your store as something that is unique, a unique experience that brings in global partners and really building the partnerships that help you attract the right types of growth to go into new markets. Does that make sense? Or
yeah.
And in terms of thinking about, going from Singapore to Silicon Valley, what specific steps did you take? I mean, can you share some of your secret sauce?
I think it's more of an excitement. It's rather than a secret sauce. We were speaking to Westfield Valley Fair for about 2 years. It's been a long time, so we kept in touch, and they were still very intrigued with our concept. So I believe that, like I was saying earlier, keep in touch with any potential business partners. Do not lose the connection, because you never know when an opportunity might arise. So just in TechWing, where they thought of, hey, you know what, come by again, let's speak and let's meet up and discuss. So I think the opportunity for us to jump from a very small country in Singapore to Silicon Valley is very exciting. I've been here for a week. I can't believe I'm still here. So we're going to make use of this opportunity to help our creators gain some awareness, of course, and build a strong branding here.
It's great. Yeah, and pointing out that it doesn't happen overnight. So it takes time to build those partnerships, and continuing to follow up and grow into new markets takes time. And I think that I'd love to hear from you, Hanson, on, you know, we at past events talked about your partnership with Rocketbook, and would love to hear again why you chose to partner with them, what other partners have helped you, you know, innovate and grow. Would you share with the audience some of that?
Of course. So the decision to work with Rocketbook was actually a pretty big decision in our company in general. Our first Kickstarter we did was a $10,000 Kickstarter in 2014. Our second one was a $200,000 Kickstarter with them just a year or so ago. With our product, we have the ability to customize it and print really anything on it. So to work with Rocketbook seemed like a very seamless integration, where all we would have to do is print their templates on our products and create a product that was co-created and would serve their audience as well as ours in a new way. So they're very familiar with launching on Kickstarter. They've got a massive audience, much larger than our own. And we thought, yeah, if we create a product that's going to work beautifully with their customer base, then this will be a big hit for everybody. And what it did for us is it allowed us to, really kind of take a step back and think about all that stuff that we never really thought about in the beginning. Even though I went to business school, they say, do the surveys, do the focus groups, really analyze your customer and everything. What we did was just kind of move, because that's what was happening. Like I said earlier, there was just demand coming in. This time it was 4 years in, we had the resources to kind of like really invest into this process of, understanding the customer, understanding the markets, understanding the use cases, and developing a real Kickstarter campaign that would be much more successful than the first one. So in short, I mean, partnering with larger companies, larger organizations, people overseas, people within the US, has really been our strategy from the beginning. We're a very small team. It's really just me and my partner, Ken, that run most of the day-to-day. We've got some people that handle our customer service that are college students. But then outside of that, we've got distributors around the world. We've got our marketing team outsourced, our accounting team outsourced, our operations outsourced. Pretty much everything that we do is managed by lots of different organizations. And having partnerships like that has been the key to our lean and scalable growth so far, because we're really not strapped for time right now. We're just kind of moving along. We're growing as the demand of our product grows. And partnerships like that of Rocketbook, or our distributors and partners in the UK, or with We the People, all of them have been really good for helping us get our product into new markets where we don't really fully understand the market as much. As Evan mentioned, it's difficult to just enter a market and really not research it and understand it. As a two-person team, not really something we have the bandwidth of doing. We're selling in about 20 countries right now. So to fully understand that is pretty challenging. And just being in Malaysia now for the extended period of time I have been, and learning about how different it is here than being an entrepreneur from Boston and New York. I never would have really thought about the buying styles, the personas, the decisions to buy, the currency exchange, and all of that. So having partners allows me not to have to go live in every single country we sell in, to deep dive into the marketplace.
Yeah, it sounds like finding partners who know what they're doing in new markets, and then also kind of bigger partners that can help you grow can really be part of that process. One of the attendees had mentioned brand evangelists or influencers, thinking about testimonials and like how much time or effort you should spend in investing in or searching for kind of the influencers or the partners that can help spread the word. I can open the floor, Evan, Daniel, Nissan. Hanson, anyone want to unmute themselves and jump in on thinking about influencers and brand evangelists as partners?
Yeah, I can chip in, I guess. So yeah, I feel like it's like PR if you think about it. You might get featured on Forbes or Mashable. You can use that for credibility, but don't expect like, you know, millions of dollars out of it or anything like that. I think that it's good to have it, but not even consider spending anything like about 50% of your total budget. That might be a stretch even itself, right? It's definitely good to have, but you know, it's not gonna make or break your campaign.
And
That's
you're
my
saying
2 cents.
50% of your marketing budget.
Yeah, or even
At
or
most,
even
right? Or no?
yeah, I think so.
Interesting. Huh.
For us, I would just jump in and say we haven't really had a strategy for like Instagram influencers and stuff like that. We have had a lot of PR in the beginning, which helped significantly, but currently it's growing with just our best customers. For us, co-working spaces have been a place where our customers gather, they meet, their companies grow, they move to a new location. So instead of just focusing on, you know, an article that is going to be posted and then of course stays along on the web forever, but will become irrelevant a few years later, we focus on brand visibility in places that our customers are consistently coming into. So our customers end up becoming the evangelists for us. So with that, and with that understanding and the margins to do so, we started partnering with a ton of co-working spaces, giving them discounted products all around the world, purely so we can have more people engage with our products, see our products, understand our products, and then buy them for their own homes or offices.
Have you given us any, Hanson, yet at CIC?
I tried to.
Okay, we'll have to talk about that offline. Partnerships are something, you know, like finding, like CIC is growing significantly, and sometimes it's finding the right partners, right? So if you're a big company, you have to be selective about the partners you partner with, and at the same time, you have to find the right person to talk to. So if you're trying to partner with the kitchens, you know, like you have to know the right person to talk to get your food into the kitchen. But if you're talking to me, I'm in marketing, I'm not in the kitchens, then it might be hard for you to get a partnership in place if you're not talking to the right person at a larger company. Nissan and Daniel, did you want to add anything in about brand influencers or evangelists? Have you worked with it, or do you primarily use customer testimonials too?
I think for We the People, we do have that influencer marketing that we're involved in. It really depends on the product. You know, if it's something that's, you know, you just got to target the right kind of influencers. You know, if it's a tech product, don't go for someone who isn't famous or isn't well known for tech. I think that's pretty much logical. But at the same time, you know, check out their reach, what kind of people they work with, and who are their viewers, and whether they are influential in their particular strength.
And Daniel?
On our side, we don't use any influencers, but what we sometimes do is we send out review units in advance to reputable websites and blogs, and we try to work on an exclusive deal where they'll write a review which will publish at the launch of our campaign. So a review from a reputable source during the launch of the campaign does give a lot of credibility to the product and the campaign. And
I think there's some very specific numbers that you shared, Daniel, that might be helpful for everyone to hear as we think about kind of running campaigns and what percentage to spend on Facebook versus Google ads on a smaller campaign versus a larger campaign. Do you want to go ahead and kind of just say out loud some of the responses that you gave here so that those who aren't seeing all the chats can hear how you responded to this, the questions about digital marketing versus organic?
Yeah, so one of the attendees was asking me how much of my crowdfunding revenue came from PR, digital marketing, and organic. So for us, it's an equal share, about 1/3 organic, 1/3 through digital marketing ads, and 1/3 through our own marketing effort. They was also asking what kind of ad budget do we set aside for, say, $1 million campaign. We set aside 15% of the, say if we are aiming for a $1 million campaign, we will set aside 15% of that 1 million to do digital marketing. So if we are aiming for $1 million campaign, we will set aside $150,000 for digital marketing. Also, what are the best practices for pre-campaign? Some of the tips I share is we do send out embargoed press release 1 week before our campaign launch. You don't want to do it too early. You also don't want to do it too late. I think 1 week is just about right to keep everything fresh. And sometimes we also take out sponsored articles with major blogs. So that way we can guarantee coverage for our campaign. We also use digital marketing agencies like Jallup. They're probably the best in the business to do our pre-campaign and digital marketing during our campaign. And then post-campaign, we always launch on Kickstarter, and post-campaign we will switch to Indiegogo in demand. And there are times where we will use Indiegogo to do digital marketing on their own platform.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all those details and what your strategy is on your campaigns, or what's been successful for you. And I'm curious if Evan or Nissan, seeing other campaigns, what have you seen be successful for companies that have grown after launch?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, I think that Daniel has a great product, right? So products, I guess. So I think that the numbers that he posted are a bit of a stretch for like every creator. So for example, a 4-to-1 ROI for every single crowdfunding, physical product crowdfunding campaign that's out there is a bit of a stretch. And 15% of the budget, considering that you have 1/3 coming from organic, is also a bit of a stretch. The better your product, the better the numbers, right? And the less money you'd have to invest at the end of the day. But for an okay, let's just say, crowdfunding campaign that tries to raise like 6 figures or 7 figures, tries to raise $1 million, then I think as a rule of thumb, it's good to consider about 30% of your budget going into marketing and aiming for a 3-to-1 ROI. That sounds okay to me. You know what I mean? Going for a 4-to-1 to a 5-to-1, well, I've personally been doing this since 2012. And back in the day, what I can tell you, like 2014, 2015, it was way easier to get a 5-to-1, 6-to-1, 8-to-1 ROI with Facebook ads, Google ads, PR, and everything in between. But considering that, back in the day, there were only like, for example, 400, 500 campaigns going live every month, right? Your project with just a bit of a just a small marketing budget could actually, stand out from the crowd. But now we're talking about 5,000 plus campaigns launching on a monthly basis. So CPMs are, obviously more expensive. Clicks are more expensive, no matter what's the source. PR firms and publications are getting bombarded with emails. So I think that, at the end of the day, the better your product at the end of the day, the less it's going to cost you actually to get the word out, because people are going to talk about it, right? But if you're talking about launching a campaign, raise 6 figures and do it the right way, just think of 30% of your total, 30% of whatever you want to raise should be your marketing budget, and aiming for a 3-to-1 ROI. I think it's reasonable in 2020.
Thanks,
Hey,
Evan.
Yeah, I do have a question for you. I do have my own brand of socks. It's called Talking Toes. So in regards to marketing, it's socks, and the kind of budget that we have maybe for a brand that, does socks as compared to something that does like a power banks, or even like wall chargers or tech products. what's the advice for smaller brands who have a lesser budget, but the conversion, it's it's socks. So per product, it's probably maybe 10 USD as compared if you spend the same amount, and maybe a power bank, it's like 100 USD, but you're spending the same kind of money for your marketing budget. So what do you have to say, and what are your advice for smaller brands?
Yeah. So a few things. So the first one is by far the most important thing is to have someone in your team that takes care of all the advertising, right? And he has a stake in the company. So you don't necessarily hire an agency in which you're going to have to pay an overhead for Facebook ads, for PR and everything. So it's better to partner with people, to find some partners, give them equity to your company as an example, right? Give them a salary, give them a percentage of the success. I don't know how you're going to work things out, but you need to have someone from your team help you out. And at the end of the day, have a team, right? Instead of relying on third parties. When it comes to like a small price product, it makes more sense to focus on smaller communities instead of just pouring money into Facebook, pouring money into Google. You can definitely do that, but it's just going to be like way more challenging and not that profitable for you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You got it.
I just want to do a couple more questions on campaigns and then shift also into the kind of the global discussion further. There's a couple attendee questions on, email marketing, whether that's been used, and, when do you start contacting prior backers for new campaigns? I think maybe Hanson, you might be able to, Hanson, Daniel, or Nissan, anyone who's run a campaign, I would think could talk a little bit about what your strategies are there. And then it looks like, Daniel, you did answer, you used email marketing and contact backers between 3 to 7 days before the campaign starts. So that's a pretty specific answer. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in about that question.
Sure.
And then, okay, Hanson.
So what we ended up doing is since Rocketbook has a very, with both campaigns, one was very grassroots, just us, emailing friends and family, posting on Facebook, trying to generate some buzz. The second was partnering with Rocketbook, hundreds of thousands of emails. We're introducing a product to their customer base and Kickstarter community. So the strategies were very different. The first was get as much PR up front, just try to do a big push at the beginning and a big push at the end. With the Rocketbook partnered campaign, they introduced the strategy to us that we would send maybe 10% of the emails on day one and then trickle them throughout the 30 days. And what this did for us was it allowed us to continuously get new backers from their community, which then allowed us to stay on the homepage of Kickstarter. So the whole campaign, we were in the top 10 products. We were the top product for a few days. We were always the top tech product, even though we're a whiteboard, which was pretty funny. But a scannable whiteboard for that product. But what their strategy with email was just send to the Kickstarter backers that had purchased in the past, in the beginning, and then slowly dribble them out across the month, and then engage them through the Kickstarter updates throughout the campaign, and then post-campaign, keep engaging them there to get them into your overall marketing ecosystem.
Yeah, I think some people think email marketing, isn't effective, but it can really drive strong results. So, and Hanson, while you were talking, there was another question that I do think really talks about that global aspect of where you are now and being in Asia and thinking about cultural buying differences, differences in selling and buying and what the audiences look like. Can you go ahead and kind of talk through what you wrote here and anything else you might want to add about thinking about, the Asia market?
Definitely. So what's interesting is in the US, we sell a premium product. And that's selling a premium product to the largest economy in the world. So from my perspective in the beginning, it was, we've got a product, it's a couple $100, no big deal. But after starting to export products to Europe and then seeing, okay, the export fees plus the VAT plus all of these additional fees really make the product almost outside of the reach of that consumer. To combat that, we're working on manufacturing direct to Europe and then selling, so we don't have to deal with it all because we manufacture in the US. So we're working on that. As far as Asia, we could go to China to get things cheaper and then sell direct to the Asian market that way. But we still want to have the premium side of the market, so we're okay with a little bit of extra cost there. But we are thinking about introducing a basics product, kind of like an Amazon Basics, that allows us to enter the different markets at different price points. Because even if a product is 200 USD, that's 800 Malaysian ringgit, which is kind of absurd for any person in any income level in this country. So we're looking into more affordable solutions where we can continue to push our brand to a larger audience and just kind of approach it in a different way. Similar to how lots of car companies have different tiers of products that are only available in certain countries and not in others. So that's kind of the strategy that we're going to implement going forward, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, thinking about what might be some landmines that you would face as you go into new markets too. I always think of that Nova car, where you don't want to name something the wrong name as you're going into a new market too. So in terms of thinking about those downfalls, Nissan, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about what you've seen as kind of companies that have grown successfully in a We the People store versus one that you think hasn't, or what are some as companies are growing with you, what are some things that you're seeing that might be challenges or things that traps that you want to avoid?
Probably I'll have to touch on Hanson's ThinkBot. It was doing extremely well in the States with us, in Singapore as well, fantastic. But of course, like you said, it's a matter of getting the costing down. If it's made in the US and then back, if it's in Asia, it's going to be ×3, ×4, and it doesn't really make sense from a consumer point of view. So, it's mostly getting logistics done, and I could just suggest that, you don't ship it in the canisters. I think now with ThinkBot, they're shipping the packaging is in a very large canister. They could ship it in sheets, and then you could have it shipped over in a cardboard or in a package to Singapore or to China, where it could be repackaged. So stuff like that, we help with creators to advise on, how to enter different markets properly. But at the same time, it's always, we work very closely with them. We hope that they could take some of the advice and vice versa, because at the end of the day, sales does matters at the store. So just like in the one in Silicon Valley, right now it's currently under construction. I would love to show you guys pictures. We were supposed to do this sometime in the store when you could see the setup, but now it's under renovation. But we have lots of brands that are doing extremely well. They're not world famous brands. They're not, the top brands on Kickstarter. It's not a 4 million funding. It's not a 5 million funding, but they're 20,000, 30,000. So what we do is that we get them, we approach them, and we make them superstars in their own right. Our ability is to get brands to shine in whichever space that they are in with us. So that's our key niche. Of course, there are lots of brands that do extremely well. I'm sure Hyperjuice will do extremely well with us once it's in and it's commercial. I can't wait for this. Daniel, you know it. So I can't wait to work on this with you. So, we have about 6 to 8 new brands every month. So we have a buying team. We have an accounts managing team that works very closely with them. Unlike typical, retail partners, that it's mostly like a buy, sell, trade business. It's very commercial, but for us, we try to work as close as we can. I think the personal touch that we have and that we add to creators is something that makes us stand out. And this is our vision for Creators by Creators, as you know, CBC. That's the same kind of vision as we apply throughout the years and into the near future.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I just made me think of what Rocketbook said at a previous event, where they're constantly coming up with new products or thinking about what's going to, appeal to the new markets or, address an ongoing need and being able to innovate regularly. And I think, Hanson, you touched on that as well, thinking about different products and innovating. So I have a question for Evan in terms of how and what do you do to keep your product relevant to a global audience and dealing with pricing? I think you talked about that a little bit, but just as we've had this conversation, circling back to thinking about relevance of products and innovation, like what's the one piece of advice you'd give on, you know, staying alive and growing global?
I mean, it's all about making the numbers work at the end of the day, right? One thing, I'm gonna kind of reverse engineer the question, and I'm gonna recommend what not to do in crowdfunding, which I see happening a lot lately, which is basically copy other people's products. I mean, you've mentioned that through the previous panel earlier today, which it's so bad, right? On top of copying other people's products, which is very common in our days, the second worst thing that I can think of is going on AliExpress, going on Alibaba, finding a product, branding it, and introducing it as, you know, the latest, most innovative, world's first on Kickstarter, right? This is a big no-no. This is definitely a big no-no. When it comes to pricing, do your own research, because I don't know, for some reason, right? Creators and entrepreneurs in general think that, you know, like, I'm gonna price my product $49 because it just sounds nice, right? Without doing any research. And then they go live, they see that the conversion rate is 0.001%, and they're wondering why, which is basically lack of research. So I think that making sure that you go through the numbers, right? Making sure that you know your competition, right? You know who's your competitor, what price point they're selling, where are they offering their product, what kind of partnerships they've accomplished over the course of the last few months and years. And reverse engineering the entire process for your own brand could definitely, you know, give you skyrocket your company and definitely give you a boost, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. And as we think about the world changing too, I think this would be a good question for everyone to answer. And Daniel answered it a bit in terms of Kickstarter and Indiegogo changing, with one having more organic traffic, the other having better analytics, but they're both, that's shifted for them as competitors in the crowdfunding space. As you think about a brand growing globally and looking to kind of beat out competition or really stand out, what are the trends you're seeing for a company that has successfully crowdfunded their campaign and they're looking to, you know, enter global markets? Why don't we start with you, Evan, and then we can go around and have each person talk about what you see is kind of that top trend that might be affecting global creators.
Sure. So first of all, you know, I'm so happy seeing, for example, some of our customers or people that I know of in the industry creating businesses out of, you know, crowdfunding. This is just exciting, and you couldn't do that 10 years ago. And it's just amazing, you know, like launching a product, maintaining your community, creating brand ambassadors, creating a team, scaling your product, and then going on Indiegogo as an example, and fulfilling your product and launching another project for a V2. So I've seen many creators doing that over the course of the last few years and doing it very successfully as well. So one of the trends is that there's a new kind of type of entrepreneurships when it comes to innovation and products, right? Which is, there are people out there that, you know, they don't want to go through the usual retail route. They don't want to offer their products to stores, you know, brick and mortar stores. They just go and launch, you know, Kickstarter campaigns, and that's pretty much it. Then they go for V2, then they go for V3, and they've built like tens of thousands of fans, right? And it's just impressive, and it's just amazing to experience that, especially sitting, you know, on the front seat with Gadgetflow and the rest of my team. It's just mind blowing if you think about that. Again, exactly, like 10 years ago, you couldn't actually experience that. So when it comes to trends, one tip that I can give is, you know, to adjust with what's changing, whether that's Kickstarter, whether that's, you know, the financial market, whether that's whatever it is, you know, just adapt.
Thanks, Evan. What about you, Hanson? What's the future of innovation, the future that you're seeing, and the trend that you're following?
Definitely. So as Evan mentioned earlier, the return on ad spend used to be, you know, 4 or 5 or 6, just crazy numbers. Facebook ads have gotten more expensive. Press has kind of dried up a little bit in terms of Kickstarters. I was talking to a friend yesterday about them launching their Kickstarters. They're like, we should reach out to all the press. And when I was, you know, starting out in 2014, you mentioned a Kickstarter, people were all excited to talk about it. And these days there's less writers that are as enthusiastic to write about it because it's not as big of a deal. As Evan also mentioned, there's like 5,000 campaigns launching per month. That's a lot of campaigns to have any press write about. But more specifically, when I'm talking to people about which how to launch a Kickstarter, which platform to choose, I think as things continue to grow, there's a lot more platforms to launch on, whether it's Kickstarter, Indiegogo, any of the equity crowdfunding campaign or platforms. There's a larger variety of communities out there that you can crowdfund your product or service within. And I think being specific about which platform which platform holds your customers is important, because a lot of people I talked to somebody who has a female designer bag wanting to launch on Kickstarter, and that might not be the best community because Kickstarter isn't necessarily that demographic. So understanding the market, understanding how it's changing, understanding which marketplaces are out there for you to sell on, and what the demographics of each are is very important before just jumping all in and saying, I want to launch a Kickstarter because everybody knows Kickstarter.
Thanks, Hanson. And so Daniel, going from Asia to California, what are you seeing?
What am I seeing? About what?
What would you say is the big trend that you have to that or a piece of advice that you'd give to a crowdfunder who is thinking about the future of going global?
Well, I mean, the biggest market today is Asia and the US. Culturally, many markets in the world, they actually follow US consumer trends. Although lately we are seeing China dictating some of the consumer trends as well. I mean, for us, I guess you just have to reach out to the market that is most important to you, be it China or US. For us, it's the US, which in our market more or less accounts for 50% of the global market. Create a product for the US market and along the way tweak it a little bit for the other markets.
Yep. So focusing on the biggest market is what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
Nissan, to wrap up, I think some of the things that We the People is doing in terms of thinking about franchising and the live funding campaigns, I'd love to hear you kind of talk a little bit about Find Day and what's going on here with this conference too. I think this is a trend that I'm seeing in terms of the online and the offline coming together more and more. Any thoughts to wrap up this panel discussion?
I think with what we've done, it's something that has never been done before. Most people or most offline businesses are going online. It's because of the high rental rates, whichever country you're in. But I think we found a really sweet spot of merging and complementing the offline and the online models. Because it's crowdfunding, because it's Kickstarter, so there's always doubts that our consumers have that, hey, you know what, is this gonna work? I've seen so many scams, people run away, people avoid replying consumers after a long period of time. So like what Hanson has said, it's finding the right market and finding whether it's the right kind of a place for you to launch a campaign. But at the same time, for us, we strongly believe that, hey, you know what, make sure the product works, make sure you account to people, because it just spoils the name of crowdfunding. I think crowdfunding is a platform where, lots of great ideas should thrive, lots of creators should use, but at the same time, we see lots of people abusing the platforms, which is not cool at all. So what we do as We the People is that we try to build the kind of trust that consumers can have, not just in our startups, but we're here to bridge the gap between startups and consumers. I think that's a key part in crowdfunding where we play a really strong role at the physical front. But of course, as you were mentioning about live funding, it's a great marketing tool that we have. We do lots of marketing and consultancy as well. We have a large database of members, and they're mostly our consumers and customers on the ground, be it B2B or B2C customers. So, if you have a project, have your samples and have the products or the MVP displayed live in our stores, and that's going to build a very strong following, as well as people come down to see and to view the prototypes and samples. Especially if if you're strong in Singapore, that's where we are extremely strong in, and that's where we want to establish a strong foothold in Silicon Valley. We get about 6 to 7 new brands that are live on live funding campaigns or our stations every month. So that's a really strong number.
And we do have to wrap up our session, Nissan. So I would say everyone do go to the live funding that's happening now. Go to the stores when it's happening there, and we'll be back for our next session shortly. So take your next break, and then we'll be joining in at 10 p.m. Eastern time for our industry expert sessions. Thank you again so much for all your insights, and look forward to the next sessions.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.